So we're in questions of mental capacity. To what extent does a husband have mental capacity to give a get? And to what extent are we going to cut him some slack? So, for example, if he's just about to be led out to die, to be executed, if he's under stress. And as we jump into the seventh chapter, we're going to carry on with these questions of mental capacity, particularly as they relate to agents. Right the way through the Mishnah of Gittin, the Mishnah is incredibly focused on the question of agency in delivering a get. And so the Mishnah in the seventh chapter brings together these two themes. And it asks, Mish achazo kur de yakos. Kur de yakos must be a Greek word. Someone who's been seized by kur diakos. And I haven't tried to translate that word because we don't really understand what it is. The Mishnah continues, Ve'amar kitfu get leishti. He gives an agent an instruction to write a bill of divorce for his wife. It doesn't say, by the way, to give the bill of divorce. He says to write it. And the Mishnah straight away rules, lo amar klum. He hasn't said anything. So there seems to be a question of capacity with this Kurdiakos disease, but we don't know what it is. And interestingly, the Ramban Maimonides seems to equate it with something that it feels a little bit like epilepsy in the words of the Rambam. So the Rambam says, Kurdiakos choli mitchadesh mi maluei chadrei hamoach. It's a disease that begins in the cavities of the brain. Really interesting. He must have done some post-mortem, some autopsies of people with this disease. How does it go on? Umit balbel hadat, and it confuses the mind. Mipnei kach, because of this, it confuses the thought because it inhabits the cavities of the brain. Vehu min miminei cholei hanofel, and it's one of the diseases of the fetus. So it seems to be an inherited disease. That's why we think he's talking about epilepsy. The Bartanura, by the way, normally follows Maimonides. Usually, the Bartanura follows Maimonides, but not in this case. The Bartanura says, someone gripped by Kordiakos, well, nit balbalad ator mechamat shade. His mind became confused as a result of an evil spirit, a shade. Hasholet al hashote yain chadash. The evil spirit that reigns over those who drink new wine. So maybe for the Bartanura, there's something about hangover, and for the Rambam, there's something about an epileptic fit. It's one or the other, but in either case, it might be a temporary issue, because interestingly, the Mishnah goes on to say, Amar, so he says, write a get for my wife, implying that it's going to be given as well. And then he's gripped by Kordiakos. Ve'amar al tiktavu, and then he says, don't write it. So he changes his mind. And of course, usually we would rule that if he changes his mind, the instructions to the agent are cancelled. But in this case, ein devarav ha'achronim klum. His last words are nothing. We don't seem to pay any attention to any instruction he gives while he's being gripped with this Kordiakos. He doesn't have mental capacity either to give an instruction or to cancel an instruction. Now, what if he's got physical incapacity? So the Mishnah now goes on, the opposite case. In the first case, he doesn't have mental capacity, but he can speak. What about someone who does have mental capacity, but cannot speak? Nishtatak, he's become mute. Gosh, and he seems to want to divorce his wife because they say to him, Amrulo, Nichtov gate leishtach, shall we write a get for your wife? Vehir barosho, and he nods his head. So he seems to signify with his head that that's the right thing. Now, is that a real signal? Does he have capacity? Does he not? Does he know what's going on? What are we going to do? Bodkinoto. So we're going to check him. We're going to check him. Bodkinoto shelosha pa'amim. Im amar alav lav ve'al hin hare elu yichtavu ve'yitnu. We're going to test him 3 times. And the commentators suggest that we're going to ask him questions like, for example, is there snow in the winter? Or does the blossom appear in the spring? We're going to ask him simple questions that he shouldn't know the answer to, and we're going to test his responses. This is a bit like a simple mental capacity test. Very, very simple mental capacity test that a neurologist today will give. And if he passes 3 out of 3, then we're going to consider that he's got capacity to communicate enough about the situation of this get. What if his instruction is not precise? Amrulo, nichtov get li'ishtach. So they said to him, shall we write a get for your wife? Amar lehen b'tovu. And he said to them, write it. So what did they do? Well, remember, we've already learned the principle that an agent, in this case anyway, can't pass his agency on to another agent. So he says to them, write. What did they do? Amrula sofer vechatav. They gave instructions to a scribe, and the scribe wrote. Veladim vechatmu, and they gave instructions to the witnesses, and the witnesses signed. So they behaved a bit like, well, like a bet din actually, like managers, but not like agents. Afal pi shekatavuhu va'achatamuhu, even though they have written it and signed it. Unatanuhu la, and they gave him the get. Ve'chazar of unatano la. So they wrote it and they signed him. They gave him the get, and he turns round and he gives it to her. So it is properly given. It's properly given. But remember, we've learned right up front that the get has to be written for the woman concerned. And it seems that it has to be written in accordance with the instructions he gives his agents. Because the Mishnah rules straight away, Hare haget batal, the get is absolutely worthless. If he tells them to write, but then they give the instruction to a scribe, or they give the instruction to witnesses to sign, the get is absolutely useless. Ad sheyomar la sofer ktov, until he tells the scribe, write. Ve'la'adim chatomu, and he tells the witnesses, sign. His instruction has to be valid at the time that he gives it. Otherwise, the get has no value.